are false. Some of you will never get that one. How about this one? There's no truth in anything but science. Richard Dawkins gets very close to saying this. This is called scientism. That we get all our truth from science. There's one problem with it. What's the problem?
Changes.
What question would you ask somebody who said this? Yes, is that statement scientific? Just ask the question, is that a scientific truth? Can you go in the laboratory and prove that? No, that's a philosophical claim. And what is so often forgotten is that you can't do science without philosophy. In fact, you can't even read the newspaper without philosophy. Everything is built on philosophy. What's philosophy? Well, it's technically the love of wisdom, but actually it involves the laws of logic, reasoning, it involves what's called metaphysics and ethics. All those things can't be proven by science. They have to be assumed by science in order to do science. That's why I've said many times before, science doesn't say anything scientists do. All data needs to be interpreted. And the scientist has to interpret the data. And in fact, the argument between the intelligent design people and the Darwinists, it's not a debate over evidence. You know what it's a debate over? It's a debate over philosophy. It's a debate over what causes will we consider possible before we look at the evidence, and then once we have the evidence, how will we interpret it? Well, the Darwinists have already philosophically ruled out the possibility there's intelligence out there, so no matter what the evidence looks like, they always conclude it must be a natural cause. Now, maybe they're right about that, but it might be more the result of their philosophical presupposition where they've already ruled out intelligence than an honest look at the evidence. There's a lot more in the book on that. I got to move on. This is a big one. You ought not judge. Especially if you're a Christian, people are going to say, Jesus said don't judge. Why are you judging? Stop judging! Hypocrite. First of all, logically, what's the problem with the statement? It's a judgment. So the next time somebody says you ought not judge, put your hands on your hips and say, then why are you judging me for judging? Because that's what they're doing. By the way, did Jesus say don't judge? No, what did he say? He said, judge not lest you be judged. By the same standard you judge others, you'll be judged by that standard. So before you try and take the speck out of your brother's eye, take the log out of your own eye first, then you'll be better able to help your brother. Is Jesus telling us not to judge here? No, he's telling us to take the speck out of our brother's eye. That involves making a judgment. He's simply saying, get that problem out of your life first so you can better help your brother. So this is not a command not to judge, it is a command on how to judge. In other words, don't judge hypocritically. Everybody makes judgments. Atheists make judgments, Christians make judgments, everybody in between makes judgments. The only question is, are your judgments true? That's the only question. And by the way, a lot of people think that Jesus didn't make judgments. Jesus made judgments all the time. And by the way, if you think Jesus was just a nice, soft, so sweet guy who never said a bad word about anyone, you have never read Matthew chapter 23. Amen. What does he say in Matthew chapter 23? To the Pharisees. And by the way, who are the Pharisees? They were the religious and political leaders of Israel. And Jesus went after them. Are you telling me Jesus got involved in politics? Yeah, he did. He went after the political leaders of Israel. And he wasn't so nice doing it, actually. What did he say to the Pharisees? He said, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You strain out a gnat and swallow a camel. Oh, you look great on the outside. You're whitewashed tombs, but on the inside, you're full of dead men's bones. You go a mile to make a convert, and then once you make them a convert, you make them twice as much a son of hell as you are. How will you avoid being condemned to hell? What? Sweet and gentle Jesus? Yes, Jesus was not Barney. Did we all just get along, boys and girls? No! He was not Mr. Rogers. Can you say kindness, boys and girls? Well, most of the time he was kind, but he certainly didn't go around saying, this sermon brought to you by the letter E. You see, Jesus was tough and direct and straightforward. Sometimes we need to be that way too. Now, there's a lot more of these self-defeating statements that people make to say there is no truth, but it kind of reminds me of Homer Simpson here and a lie detector test. It's an easy way for you to be a lie detector to detect these self-defeating statements. You simply apply the claim to itself and see if it works, which, as I say, reminds me of Homer Simpson. Check this out.
Now we're going to run a few tests. This is a simple lie detector. I'll ask you a few yes or no questions, and you just answer truthfully. Do you understand?
Yes.
Can everybody see that's a self-defeating statement, ladies and gentlemen? All right, here. There's one small problem with truth. And here it is. Pascal said it very well. He said, people almost invariably arrive at their beliefs not on the basis of truth, but on the basis of what they find attractive. Christians in here, do you just believe Christianity because you find it attractive? That you like the idea that maybe you're going to see your loved ones after you die, you're going to be with Jesus after you die, but you couldn't support it intellectually if someone asked you? Atheists, are you just an atheist because you like the idea that there's no moral accountability and you want to live your life your own way? Are you really open to the evidence? Christians, are you open to the evidence? Because I can tell you, I see this in myself. That we all sometimes suppress the truth because we don't like it. We want to go our own way. We want to do what we want to do, and we don't want truth to get in the way. So I just throw that out here. I know there's truth because it's self-defeating to say there isn't. But are we willing to follow the truth and follow the evidence where it leads? For that, now we're going to look at, does God exist? I think it's self-defeating to say there is no truth, so Richard Dawkins could be right. Of course, at this point, the Bible could be right. Why? Because there is truth out there. It's self-defeating to say there isn't. But now we're going to take a look at this question of God. Does God exist? And before you talk about God, you've got to define what you mean by God. We're talking about a theistic God here. What's a theistic God? That's a God who's beyond the world, who created the world, sustains the world. A theistic God is roughly like a painter is to a painting. Michelangelo paints the painting. His attributes are expressed in the painting, but Michelangelo is not the painting. You see, the worldview that believes the painter and the painting are the same is called pantheism. I'm God, you're God, we're all God. You know pantheism. Use the Force, Luke. The whole Star Wars series is pantheistic. The God out there is the whole universe, but he's not personal. We're not talking about that kind of God. We're talking about a personal God who is as distinct from the universe as a painter is from a painting. The only difference here is that this God of the universe isn't detached from the painting in the sense that after the painter paints it, it stays together. This God of the universe is holding the universe and you together right now. In fact, the best analogy would be a symphony to music. Once the symphony stops playing, the music's over. That's the relationship of a theistic God to the universe. If he decides that the universe no longer should exist, everything goes out of existence. Now, what's the evidence for this? We covered this last time, so we're going to go through it quickly. From the beginning of the universe, the cosmological argument, that's the first argument that there is a theistic God. Now, cosmological comes from the Greek word cosmos, which means world or universe. It says if the universe had a beginning, it must have had a beginner. The second line of evidence is the design argument, also called the teleological argument. Telos, Greek word for design or purpose. It says if there's design in the universe and design in life, there must be a designer. These two arguments are scientific. You can get evidence for these by either looking through a telescope or looking through a microscope. The third argument, however, is not scientific at all. It's more philosophical in nature, but it's the argument we've all known since we were very small children, and it's the argument from morality known as the moral argument. And it says if there's one thing morally wrong out there, just one, like it's wrong to torture babies for fun, or it's wrong to murder 6 million people in a Holocaust, then there has to be a God. Why? Because if there is no God, then that's just your opinion against, say, Hitler's opinion. If there is no standard beyond humanity that really defines what rightness is, then you just have opposing human opinions. So there only needs to be one objective moral value for God to exist. Now let's start here at the cosmological argument. And this is the argument that many say points back to the big... Now some Christians might go, Frank, we're Christians here, we don't believe in the Big Bang. You guys don't believe in the Big Bang? I believe in the Big Bang. I just know who banged it. You see, the evidence for the Big Bang is indeed quite good. You even have atheistic scientists admitting as much. Stephen Hawking, who's an atheist, said almost everyone now believes that the universe and time itself had a beginning at the Big Bang. Now, Hawking tries to come up with another explanation for the creation of space, time, and matter. I don't think it works. We can talk about it during the Q&A if you want. But he admits the evidence points back to an absolute beginning of space, time, and matter. Alexander Vilenkin, a Russian cosmologist, put it this way: with the proof now in place, cosmologists can no longer hide behind the possibility of a path to eternal universe. There is now no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning. Now, Vilenkin is a believer in the multiverse. If you haven't heard of the multiverse, it's the idea that there are other universes out there and we just happen to be in the one that looks designed. But even Vilenkin admits this. He says, even if there are other universes out there, the whole show, all the universes together need an absolute beginning. So you don't get rid of the need for it, or you don't get rid of an absolute beginner by appealing to a multiverse. Now, I don't have time to go through all the evidence for this. It's all in the book, but the bottom line is this. If the universe had a beginning, it must have had a beginner. We're left with one of the following two options. Either no one created something out of nothing, which is the atheistic viewpoint, or someone created something out of nothing, which is the theistic viewpoint. Now, my only question is, which view is more reasonable? That someone created something out of nothing, or that no one created something out of nothing? Seems to me, number one is not as reasonable as number two. In fact, I was at Texas A&M a year or two ago, and an atheist during the Q&A, so I think number one is more reasonable. I said, number one? Let me take a look at number two for a second. Number two says someone created something out of nothing. Now, that is a miracle. But at least you have a miracle worker. You have someone. Number one is a miracle with no miracle worker. That seems to be absurd. If you want to believe that everything can come into existence from nothing, by nothing, without a cause, if the whole universe can come into existence from nothing and by nothing without a cause, then why doesn't everything come into existence from nothing and by nothing without a cause? Why don't Mercedes-Benzes and MacBook Pros just pop into existence without a cause? It could have saved me a couple grand. You know, I understand what happened. It doesn't. I said to show everybody in here how seriously we take the law of causality. And by the way, law of causality does not say everything needs a cause. There has to be an uncaused first cause. It says that everything that comes to be has a cause. I said to show everybody in here how seriously we all take that particular law of causality. There is nobody sitting in this room right now that as you sit here, you are currently worried that a hippopotamus has appeared out of nothing in your dorm room and is currently defecating on the carpet. You don't worry about that. Why? Well, you don't worry that a tiger is just going to appear out of nothing and start devouring people in here. Why? Because you know that every effect has a cause. That everything that comes to be has a cause. And the universe came to be, it only makes sense that it had a cause. And a cause, by the way, that's beyond space-time and matter. Why? Because space-time and matter were created. If space-time and matter were created, the cause must transcend space-time and matter. In other words, the cause must be spaceless, timeless, and immaterial. Now, when you think of a spaceless, timeless, immaterial cause who can choose to create, that's exactly what we mean by God. A question to ask an atheist: if there is no God, why is there something rather than nothing at all? In fact, that was the philosopher Leibniz's question. If there is no God, why does anything exist? Well, if the atheist says the universe has always been here, the evidence shows it hasn't always been here. So there must be something beyond the universe that has always been here. Again, something spaceless, timeless, and immaterial. The second argument is the argument from design, known as the teleological argument.